Shalom. And if you're just joining in, you may have seen a very fun and inviting video segment that David arranged for us. It was a scene of the Kotel, the Western Wall, with snow flurries gently cascading down upon the Kotel. It's good to laugh. By the way, snow does occasionally fall in Yerushalayim, but the video was just introduced to get us to laugh a little bit. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 Nachamal again. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. It's not hard. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 beginning ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. And if you have a tallis, you're invited to join us. The blessing ends with Asher Kitchana B'mitzvotav Vitzivano Lehit A Teif. Lita Teif, not tape. Lita Teif B'tzitzit, which means to unwrap ourselves up in the tzitzit. And the tzitzit represent 613 mitzvot in the Torah. So as we begin our morning service, we're challenging ourselves to see in our mind's eye that each one of us is enwrapped in the Torah itself. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshana b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu litatei b'tzitzit. I hope you have a siddur. We'll begin on page 99, and if you don't have a siddur, perhaps you'll be able to just kind of hum along. This is the Modeh Ani or the Moda Ani. Modeh Ani is for males, Moda Ani is for females. We are awakening with gratitude. That's a profound idea. Many people awaken and they just get up and they splash water on their faces and then they start getting dressed and they take care of their personal needs with hygiene and so on, and they get dressed and they walk out the door. And that's understandable because it's routine. But Judaism doesn't want daily life to be routine. Judaism wants daily life to be glowing with sparks of holiness and awareness. So we attach little prayers and meditations and thoughts throughout the entire day to remind us that life is anything but routine. It's with gratitude that we awaken. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shehechezarta bi nishmati b'chemla rabba emunatecha. I am grateful to you, my God, living and enduring God, for you have restored my soul to me in life. The first passage in English on page 99, a prayer for the soul. My God, the soul that you have given me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me. You watch over it when it is in me. In the future you will take it from me, but then restore it to me in the world that is coming. As long as the soul is within me, I thank you, Adonai, my God, God of my ancestors, ruler of all creation, master of all souls. Baruch atah Adonai, who restores the soul to the lifeless form. And there's a passage here on page 100 if you have the siddur. In English, it's the next to last paragraph. Shabbat celebrates the seventh day of creation. It is a day for relishing the beauty and grandeur of the natural world and for feeling a sense of fullness, satisfaction, and joy in being alive. Sometimes, merely ceasing our labors allows our souls to speak, to sing, and we turn to the Creator filled with thankfulness, yearning to express those feelings. At other times, it is the joining with our community, singing with them, praying alongside them, celebrating with them, that awakens our own sense of gratitude. We're redefining community these past 9-10 months since the outbreak of the virus. Community is now a new experience. It's voluntary participation through joining in on the internet. More importantly, staying yourself with your mind, your mental focus, and the intention of your heart as being part of a community. And with your focus and your awareness and your choice to be participating within our prayer services over the internet, you are fulfilling this little meditation. You are joining with our community, singing with them, praying alongside them. These words from the siddur are becoming alive because of you. On page 103 and 104, we rise the early morning blessings. Page 103 and 104, the Birchot HaShachar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lasech v'ivino lahavchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam sha'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam sha'asani ben chorin. I'm going to stop here for a moment. You may have never asked yourself or thought of this, but this is the Torah in book form. It's called Chumash. And of course, the Torah is the scroll. We'll take that out in a little while and read a small snippet. Have you ever thought about the fact that the word Jew doesn't appear in the Torah? The word Jew or Jewish does not appear in the word Torah. What would people be calling themselves in the days of Torah? People would be called Yisrael. Each member of the tribes would be a Yisrael. A female would be a Yisraelite. So each person could be called a Yisrael. And that's what's going on here. It's the next bracha. It's the fourth line down on page 103. Sha'asani Yisrael, God, you are blessed because you've made me a Yisrael. But there's a subtle element at work here because Yisrael can be an individual, singular, and Yisrael can also be collective, referring to the entire nation of Israel. So when I'm saying this blessing every morning, pardon me, when I'm saying the blessing Sha'asani Israel, I'm saying, blessed are you, God, for you have made me a member of the people of Israel. But in a way, I'm also saying, blessed are you, God, for you've made me all of Israel. Each Jew inside himself is the entirety of the nation of Israel. Each Jew is essential for the furtherance of the nation, the people of Israel. Sha'asani Israel. Hold on to that. Together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Matir Asurim. Baruch Atarnoi Eloheinu melech haolam Zokef Gifufim. Baruch Atarnoi Eloheinu melech haolam Rokah haaretz al hamoyim. Baruch Atarnoi Eloheinu melech haolam Hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch Atarnoi Eloheinu melech haolam Sha'asa likol tzarki. Baruch Atarnoi Eloheinu melech haolam Ozer Yisrael b'gura. Baruch Atarnoi Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tif ara. Baruch Atarnoi Eloheinu melech haolam Hanoten layoef koach. Uneinu yom v'chol yom lachenu chesro rachamim beinach v'necho roenu v'tigmlenu chasadim tovim baruch atarnoi gomel chasadim tovim mo Yisrael. And if you were standing, feel free to have a seat now. We're turning in the siddur to page 112. It's the psalm for Shabbos itself. There are 150 psalms in the Tanakh. 7 of them are associated with the days of the week. And for thousands of years, on Shabbos, we recited this psalm, Friday night and Shabbos morning as well. Mizmor shir liyom ha-Shabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lahagid baboker chasdecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asor v'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor, mizmor shir liyom ha-Shabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. It is good to thank you, Adonai, and sing to your name most high, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. Finger the lute, pluck the heart, let the sound of the lyre rise up. You gladden me with your deeds, Adonai, and I shall sing of your handiwork. How wonderful are your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever, because they don't understand you, O God. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age, they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. Od yinuvum b'seva d'shenim v'ra'ananim yu lagid ki yesharnoi tzur v'lavla tabo. We turn to the Baruch Shemar on page 122. Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam Baruch hu Baruch Osem v'reishit Baruch Omer v'Osem Baruch Gozer u'mekayim Baruch merachem al haaretz Baruch merachem al habriot Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tov Lireov Baruch Chailad V'Kayam Lo Netzach Baruch Podeh Umatzil Baruch Shemo, the singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid Olamim, Melech Mishubachim Ufardei Shmo Gadol. Baruch atah Adonai, Melech Mulabatish Bachot. Turning to the Ashrei on page 136, page 136. Remember, we are studying the Ashrei, and we're going up to the Ve'ezuz line. Inclusive Ve'ezuz speaks of God's power. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitacha Od Yalucha Selo Ashrei Am Shekachalo Ashrei Am Sharanoi Elohov Tehillah LeDavid Aromim Chaloi HaMelech Va'avarcha Shimcha Leolam Vod B'chol Yom Avarcheka Va'ahalala Shimcha Leolam Vod Gadol Adonai Umulal Me'od V'lig Dulato Ein Cheker Dor L'dor Yeshabach Masecha Ugvurotecha Yagidu Hadar Kavod Hodecha V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha Ve'ezuz Norotecha Yomeru Ugdulatecha Asaprena. At the bottom of the page. Tehillat Adonai Yidaber Pi Vivorech Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Vod V'anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'atav Yad Olam Hallelujah. And on page 141, Hallelujah, 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 El Bekodsho, hallelujah, hallelujah, Bergia Uzo, hallelujah, 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 Vig Vorotav, hallelujah, hallelujah, Kirov Gulom, hallelujah, 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 Beteka Shofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, Benevel Vechinor. Hallelujah, 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 Betof Omachol, hallelujah, hallelujah, Beminim Ve'ugav, hallelujah, 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 Betzil Tzalei Shama, hallelujah, hallelujah, Betzil Tzalei Trua, Kohan Shama Tehalelia, Kohan Shama Tehalelia, Kohan Shama Tehalelia, hallelujah, Kohan Shama Tehalelia, hallelujah. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Take in a breath and exhale. Every breath is a window into your having a soul. The Hebrew word for breath and the Hebrew word for soul are nearly identical. Nishima is breath and nishama is soul. And on page 145, Nishmat Kol Chai, the breath of all life, is a reminder every human being on this planet bears a soul. And every time you and I take a breath, we're reminding ourselves of the infinite preciousness of every person on the planet. That's Nishmat Kol Chai. It's on page 145. And then moving forward with the Chatzi Kaddish. Nishmat Kol Chai Tevarech et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. The soul of all that lives praises your name, Adonai, our God. The spirit of all flesh exalts you, our sovereign, always. The Jewish teaching that all humanity can and may and will and shall have a deep connection with God. Judaism does not teach that you have to be Jewish to be connected to God. God is bigger than Judaism. God is bigger than any and all religion or religions. Judaism is a series of traditions for and of and within the Jewish community that have developed over a span of more than 3,000 years. But there are other traditions and communities as well. And in this time when there's so much intense factionalization, and in some areas of the world, hostility from one religion to the other and from one community to the next, the message of Judaism is as necessary as any other message would be. On page 148, Yishtabach and then Chatzi Kaddish. Yishtabach Shimcha Lord Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech Hagadol HaKadosh Bashamayim Uvaretz Ki Lecha Noel Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avoteinu V'imotenu Shir Ushvacha Hallel V'Zimra Ozu Memshala Netzah Gedula Ugvura Tehillah V'Tiferet Kiddusha U'Malchut Brachot V'Hodaot Me'ata Bi'ar Olam Baruch Ataroi El Melgadavatish Bachot El Odot Arani Flot Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Melech Ochei Olamim Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba V'yamad divrachir temukokute B'chaychon v'yomechon V'chayircho be'Yisrael B'agala u'vizman kariv v'imero Amen Yehei shemei Rabba Mevorach l'olam u'me'amayon Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar v'yitman v'yinaseh V'yithadar v'yit'aleh V'yithalal shmei kedusha brechu leila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'am iran b'alma v'imero Amen. Please rise. Baruch is on page 149 and 150. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Boed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Yotzer or vorech choshech Oseh shalom Uvareh et hakol. Baruch Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. And we are seated, turning to page 151. A little bit of English. This is the El Adon, and this morning when I was first walking the shul, it was very gray and a little cool and cloudy. And since we've been here, because David helped to set up the equipment today and to organize things and so on, as we began to start the very beginning of the morning service, the sun began coming forth through the stained glass. And now it's still a little grayish in the sky, but it's been warming up. And that's in my mind as we're looking at this El Adon on the English side. Let the warmth and brightness of the sun melt our selfishness so that we can share the joys and feel the sorrow of our neighbors. And let the light of the sun be so strong that we will see all people as our neighbors. Let the earth, nourished by rain, bring forth flowers to surround us with beauty. And let the mountains teach our hearts to reach upward to heaven. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir v'niskech kulanu meir al yoro Baruch atah yotzer hamarot. The top of page 154 on the English side. You've loved us deeply, Adonai, our God, and showered us with boundless compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you and to whom you taught the laws of life, so may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so that we may understand and with love discern, hear, and study, observe, perform, and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Attach our hearts to your mitzvot. Unify our hearts to love and revere your name so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. Gathering the tzitziot together, reminding us that in a certain way, each one of us can embody the entire Torah. The bottom of page 154. V'havi'enu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiyut le'artzenu ki el povel Yeshua ta'ata Uvanu v'acharta mikolam v'lashon v'kerabtanu l'shimcha hagadol selah be'emet l'hodot l'cha ol yachercha be'ahava Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'mo Yisrael be'ahava. The top of page 155. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayo hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom ha'levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shach b'cha v'kumecha u'kishartam la'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'sharecha. The middle of page 156. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, Taber el bnei Yisrael v'marta v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem l'dorotam v'nanu al tzitzit hakanaf petil techelet v'yalachem l'tzitzit Uritem otos, chartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, vasitem otam, v'lo taturo acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, l'man tizkru, vasitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item kerushim leloechem, ani Elohechem. Asher otzeiti etchem meretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. On page 157 on the English side, the lower half of the page. You were always the help of our ancestors, a shield and deliverer for their descendants in every generation. You abide at the pinnacle of the universe. Your judgment and your righteousness extend to the ends of the earth. Blessed are the ones who attend to your mitzvot and place your teachings and words on their hearts. That refers to us. The siddur is talking about us. When you and I take hold of the messages and the teachings of God, our hearts become blessed. Our hearts become a source of blessing, and we can make a difference in the lives of others as well. Mi Chamocha is on page 158. Mi Chamocha poelim Adonai, Mi Chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Noratilot ol sefelem Shira chadasha Shibchu geulim L'shimcha sefat hayam Yachad kulam Hoduvim lechu v'yamro Adonai yimloch La'olam va'ed Tzur Yisrael Kuma b'ezrat Yisrael Ufadei Chinumecha, Yehuda v'Yisrael, Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzvot Shemo, Kiddush Yisrael. If you've been joining us lately, you've been practicing with me, taking 3 small steps backwards at the beginning of the Amidah. And there's a small phrase. It's in the siddur, if you have the siddur. The phrase is, Adonai sifatai tiftach, which means, God, open my mouth. Ufi yagid tehilatecha, and my mouth will speak words of praise to you. Once more. Adonai sifatai tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tilatecha. The trick, which has accumulated over centuries, is that we actually whisper that little phrase because it's not officially part of the Amidah. Part of the Amidah begins with Baruch Atah. And again, if we were all in a room together, we begin with Baruch Atah aloud. So the little phrase with the 3 small steps is to warm us up, to move us around a little bit, to activate our bodies in a whispered form as we prepare for the collective. And even though we are in different homes at this time, we're still part of a collective. Beginning on 159 and 160 aloud, and thereafter, the traditional text of the Amidah concludes on page 166, or offering private thoughts and prayers. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Anorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Ha'Kol V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot Umevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem Laman Shemo B'Yavav Melech Ozer Ufokeinu Mashiach Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufoket Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Meitim Atah Rav Lahoshia Mashiv HaRuach Umorit HaGashem Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed Mechaye Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim B'Rofei Cholim Omatir Asurim Omekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micha Mocha Bal Gevurot Omeda Melach Melech Memit Omechaye Omatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Atalachayod Meitim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechaye HaMeitim. In a moment, we shall continue with the Kaddish Shlema on page 167. Some are still finishing up their davening, so we'll allow an extra moment. But since I can, I'm just going to show off my Alabama tie. We can say Roll Tide because Bama beat Notre Dame last night. And now, moving on to the college championship, which will be, I think it's a week from Monday. So looking forward to that game. It'll be exciting. Roll Tide. Kaddish Shlema is on page 167. Yitkadal Vitkadash Shemei Rabba. Amen. Be'alma Divrachim Emiru. Amen. Yeshemei Rabba Mavarach. Alam Lial Meil Maya. Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitparvese, Bidaravilash, Medikudisha, Brechu, Le'elamin, Kobrachata, Vishirata, Tishbachata, Venechamata, Dami Ramil Mavimero, Amen. תתקבל צלותם ותון דחויס וקדם ושמיימרו, אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמי וחיים ולכתימרו, אמן. עושה שלום ברבומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ותימרו, amen. And in a moment on page 168, we shall rise in our own seats to open the ark, to take the Torah out. Obviously, we know that people are in their own homes. When we forget to stand up when the ark is open, we're in trouble. So even though you're at home, I ask you to rise. The ark is opened on page 168. David? Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, Ve'afutzu Oyevecha, Ve'anusu Mesanecha, Mipanecha, Ki Mitzion, Tetzei Torah, Ki Mitzion, Tetzei Torah, Udavar Adonai, Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, La'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato. As David takes the Torah out of the Aron, we turn now to page 171 in the siddur for the Shema and the Echad. We begin with the Shema and you reply in your own home. We begin with the Echad, you reply, Galu, and then we walk around a little bit. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonai Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Tinu Ramama Shmo Yakdav, L'cha Adonai Hagedol Hagavor Avativeret V'anetzach V'hahod Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz L'cha Adonai Hamamlacha V'yamin na'aseh l'chol rosh Romemo, Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavo, Ve'ishtachavo La'adam raglav kadosho Romemo, Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavo, Ve'ishtachavo Le'ar kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Thank you, David. We're turning to chapter 49 in Breshit. Chapter 49 in Breshit. If you have a Tanakh, Genesis chapter 49. In the Eitz Chaim Chumash, we're on page 298. Page 298. Page 298. This is the parsha named Vayechi. Side note, except for 6, maybe 7 Shabbats throughout the year with special names for a variety of reasons, a Shabbos is given the name of the Torah reading of the week. So this is Shabbat Vayechi. Vayechi is a word that should stand out to you. We're on page 298 if you're still opening your Chumash. Vayechi has the word chai inside it. And of course, many people recognize the word chai, alive or life or living. It's all the same. Vayechi means and he lived. And we're speaking about Father Jacob. And Jacob has now come down to Egypt with his sons, and of course they're adults, so grandchildren as well. And Joseph, as you recall, is the viceroy of Egypt. Joseph is sustaining his family along with who knows how many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people throughout the population of Egypt and beyond, with the food that Joseph warehoused during the time of plenty. And now there's a famine going on. And so the nuclear family of Joseph is within the context not only of its individual family physical survival, but it's also involved in establishing itself, you might say, psychologically, mentally, intellectually, as people, because they've left their ancestral home and now they're settled here in a foreign land. We would say they're taxpayers, although maybe they're on a grant because the brother is the viceroy. But they're taxpayers, they're becoming citizens, they're becoming integrated. So there are a series of transitions that are happening during this parsha of Vayechi. And now we're on page 298, and just a snippet and then a little bit more study before we go on to a study of the Haftorah. Vayikra Yaakov el banav vayomer he'asvu v'agid lachem et asher yikra etchem b'acharit hayamim hikatzu v'shemu b'nei Yaakov v'shemu el Yisrael avichem Ruvain b'chori ata kochiv reshit oni yeter seit v'ter os pachas kamayim al totar ki liti mishkavei avicha as chilati yitzui Allah. In this specific scene, Jacob is speaking to his 12 adult sons. He's weakening. He knows that he's going to die soon. And so he speaks to each and every one of them, and we might call it a famous deathbed scene where all the sons are convened around their father. And he speaks to each and every one of the sons specifically. Some of the little declarations or statements could be considered blessings, statements of great favor and appreciation and acknowledgement. Some of the statements might be considered indictments or even accusations. So, for example, he speaks to Shimon and Levi, and he says, you two have hands that are equipped with weapons of violence. And Shimon, a little bit, and Levi, a little bit, later on in generations to come, are associated with acts of violence. This little section here in Genesis 49 sets in motion an emerging genre of literature, which we Jews for thousands of years have called the tzava'ah, translated as an ethical will. And it is within our tradition that parents, as they anticipate their demise, will write or prepare some type of a little message to be shared with their adult children or after their deaths. We spend a great deal of time and money with accountants and attorneys and real estate trusts and departments of security companies trying to transmit assets and wealth to the next generation after we die. Jewish tradition puts forth the expectation that as we live and as we grow through the span of our lives, we accumulate wisdom and perspective. And that wisdom and that perspective should be transmitted as well. Hence the tziva'ah and ethical will. And there are many books as to how Jewish ethical wills are to be constructed and prepared. And of course, it's all voluntary, but there are styles. If you're interested, you can contact me. In these modern days, when we have many different types of technologies available, you could speak into a smartphone and make a little speech that you wish your children or perhaps grandchildren would remember. And hopefully, as you reflect upon your own life, looking backwards and asking yourself what type of message you wish to transmit to those who will be coming after you when you're gone, it will not be an indictment the way that Yaakov indicted Shimon and Levi. It will be words of guidance, of encouragement, of love, of hope, of giving a new context of understanding to your most beloved ones. And of course, this can be done in a spoken form, in a typed form, in a handwritten form, whichever form appeals to you, that will connect you to your descendants. That's the end of this week's commentary, if you will, on a small passage in the Torah. And you recall that we'd been reading Torah for perhaps 200 to 300 years, starting way back in the ancient times. And then it began customary to read a little passage of the books of the prophets. The Hebrew word for books of prophets is Navi or Nevi'im, prophets. When we take an excerpt out of the Navi or Nevi'im, the prophets, and we attach it to the Torah reading, the nickname for attachment is Haftarah or Haftorah. And the Haftorah for Vayechi is found on pages 313, 314, describing a scene also of another deathbed communication between father and son. And at this point, we're now about 500 or 600 years or more after the fact, because we're no longer with Jacob and his sons. We're now with King David, who is feeble and dying, and he offers a message to his son Solomon, who will be sitting on the throne. And that's found here on pages 313 and 314. If you don't have a Chumash, you can look at the book in the Bible known as 1 Kings chapter 2. And David, who lives a very long and storied life, has much to share with his son Solomon. And he reminds him that I walked as best as I could in the law, the Torah, and the mitzvahs of God, and you too have to walk in the law and the Torah and the mitzvahs of God. And then David also says something else, and he departs from the lofty and glorious message of live through the life of the Torah, and he says, there were a couple people who did me wrong, and I was unable to respond appropriately. You know what to do to those two people. Don't let them have long lives. So in effect, King David is calling forth and having Solomon, in Solomon's own time, take care of a couple of troublemakers and have them killed. And eventually that does happen. There are all kinds of loopholes. It's a complicated story. You have to read 2 Kings, 1 Kings chapter 2. So I find it interesting that on the one hand, we have this lofty message of glory and majesty. Follow the laws and the Torah and the mitzvot at the very beginning of David's deathbed communication with his son Solomon. And then on the other hand, a little bit of his own personal needs for vendetta creep in. And maybe we're supposed to learn from the Haftorah message as well. What is the nature of our final communication with our offspring? Is it going to be one of a grudge and a vendetta, or is it something more grand and more majestic? At this point, we offer the Mishaberach, a prayer of healing. And if you know of anyone who is ill, please mention that person's name at this time, along with the names of people who are already known to our synagogue. Shiri Shem Tov, Moshe Aharon ben Fega, Chana Sor ben Pishalea, Avram Yehuda ben Gisha, Malka bat Grace, Binyamin ben Esther, Malka bat Esther Scheindel, Shoshana bat Millie, Shifra Gittel bat Rivka, Yehuda Moshe ben Rivka, Rivka bat Chapshalivsha, Yecheskel ben Ita Vikna, Sor Liba bat Enya, Velvel ben Herschel, Shulamit Pesha, Zork ben Leah, Miki bat Cecilia, Minya Elka bat Sora, Mordechai ben Zelda, George Patinos, Murray Bradwell, Debbie Pfeiffer, Wendy Pfeiffer, Avi Moshe ben Mindel, Yaakov Avram ben Chana, Beth de Palma, Mordechai ben Zelda, LaClaudia Thomas, Claude Thomas, Louis Rodriguez, Leah Rochel bat Edith, Rafael ben Sipora, Meir ben Meryl Gita, Butch Kennedy, Amen. O God, as you have blessed our mothers and our fathers, bless and hold close all of our loved ones. Secure them in health and well-being. As your hands created the entire cosmos, extend your mighty divine hands of strength, of love, of tenderness, and of healing, in touch upon the bodies and the souls and the spirits of all of our loved ones known here today, kept within our hearts and known to you. God of life, God of healing, God of promise, bring forth your essence of life, of love, of healing, and of promise upon all of our cherished ones. Keep them well, keep them healthy, help them to stand and walk forward into a new day, a new year, with promise, with hope, with optimism. Remove their suffering and their ailments. Keep them with your touch of blessing and of shalom. And we all say, Amen. And now we rise for the Hagbah. V'zot ha'torah asher sam Moshe le'bnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai. Dundai, 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 dai. Eretz Yisrael, b'li Torah, hikegu b'li neshama. Eretz Yisrael, b'li Torah, hikegu b'li neshama. Dundai, 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 dai. 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 In the siddur, the Eitz Chaim, returning the Torah to the Aron, on page 184. Page 184. Eitz Chaim hi l'machazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Amenu Chadesh Amenu Kekedem. Excuse me, once in a while I get a frog in my throat. We are nearly concluded. We turn now to the Aleinu. Please remain standing. The Aleinu is on page 205. Page 205, Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula, liodster breshit, shelo asana kugoye aratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. Vanachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Katuv b'Toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam v'od v'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. We now mark the following yortzites, remembering with love: Sam Novak, Goldie Rips, Ethel Muchnick, Grace Sheridan, Sam Brookoff, Anthony Miola, Freda Gert, Herman Grodsky, Joseph Weissman, Rosalie Prince, Francis Finch, Ruth Leah Spinner Katz, Ginny Weber, Jacob Camille, Joseph Cohen, Larry Fernay, Rosa Gerhardt, Cheryl Chasson, Rhoda Herzog, Molly Kahn, Marsha Roberts, Morris Klarman, Dorothea Presser, Girsch Kukla. And if you know of someone else, please mention that person's name aloud in your own home. Mornis Kaddish on page 207. Pardon me. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Amen. Be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich machute v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kari v'meru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach la'olam olomei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shmei dekudisha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'meru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabbah min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Our prayers go out to everyone who is grieving and missing loved ones. And we always end the Kaddish with the prayer for Oseh Shalom, may there be peace. That's how Jewish people respond, thinking of the loss of others. May all of us be comforted and have hope and peace. And Jewish people all over the world are saying the same prayer simultaneously with those of us here who are saying the prayers here in Mobile. Reminders tonight, 7 o'clock, Havdalah on Zoom. Tomorrow morning, Krispy Kreme Roundup at Shul, 10:30 to 11:30 in the morning. Bring a chair, a mask, schmooze in the parking lot, 10:30 to 11:30 in the morning. Monday, Tanakh studies on Zoom from 12 to 1. Story time for the toddlers at 5:30 on Zoom. Tuesday, the Spirit series continues 5 to 5:30 on Zoom. Thursday, book club, 3 o'clock on Zoom. Next Friday is Guitar Shabbat with Yehuda. We're very excited. And looking ahead, 3 weeks, the 29th will be Shir Shabbat with Danielle and Josh Eisen. It's very exciting when they bring a special presentation of their own nigunim to the Friday evening service. So keep your eyes and ears attuned for announcements about Shir Shabbat, a special singing service on Friday the 29th. On Sunday the 31st at 11 a.m., after our religious school Zoom, here in person on Sunday the 31st at 11, we'll be planting flowers on Shul campus, weather permitting, in observance of the holiday of Tu B'Shvat. And we'll conclude with Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imro amen. So I hope you join us, adults and children alike, beautifying the campus, planting flowers for Tu B'Shvat on Sunday the 31st at 11 a.m. If you have any questions, give me a call. Hagafen, I hope you have a glass of wine at home. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. And a bit of hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Good Shabbos. Thank you for joining us for Shabbos. We appreciate your participation and support during our services. Looking forward to seeing you tonight on Zoom for Havdalah and in the future. May you all be blessed. Roll Tide. Good Shabbos.